The sound of the toolbox hitting the ground echoed through the old house like a gunshot. Arthur stood at the door of the cabin he had built with his own hands 53 years ago. His hands, gnarled, calloused, stained with a lifetime of varnish and sweat, hung limp at his sides. He watched his son Leo kick the heavy wooden box across the floorboards. "That is your whole life, Dad," Leo said, his voice dripping with contempt. "A box of garbage. This is what failure looks like." The toolbox came to rest against the wall. Arthur's tools spilled out. Chisels, planes, carving knives, measuring tapes. Each one had a memory. Each one had a story. The plane he had used to smooth the oak beams of this very cabin. The chisel that had carved the cradle for Leo when he was a baby. The marking gauge that had measured every piece of wood in every piece of furniture Arthur had ever made. "Please, Leo," Arthur said, his voice barely a whisper. "Just let me keep my tools." "Can't sell them for scrap," Leo said, turning away. "We need the space. The movers will be here in an hour." Brenda, Leo's wife, stepped forward. Her heels clicked against the wooden floor. The floor Arthur had laid himself plank by plank 40 years ago. She looked down at the scattered tools. Then she looked at Arthur. Her smile was thin and cruel. "You can't take these to the home anyway, Arthur. No room for junk." She stepped on one of the carving knives. Her heel pressed down on the blade, pinning it to the floor. Arthur watched the steel bend. He felt something inside him bend with it. "Brenda, please, get up," she said. "The car is waiting." The Oasis Senior Living Facility was anything but an oasis. Arthur had seen the brochures. He had seen the photographs of smiling seniors playing bingo in sunlit rooms. He had believed Leo when his son had promised him a comfortable place to spend his final years. The reality was different. The walls were the color of old cigarettes. The carpet smelled of bleach. And something else. Something sour and forgotten. The window in Arthur's room looked out at a brick wall. The bed was narrow, the mattress thin, the blanket rough against his skin. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his hands. They were trembling. "I built this city," he thought. Not the skyscrapers, not the highways, but the bones of it. The frames of its homes, the chairs where its children sat, the tables where its families broke bread. And this is where I end. He lay down on the bed and closed his eyes. He did not sleep. The photograph sat on the narrow nightstand beside his bed. Martha, his wife, his partner. The only person in the world who had ever believed in him. She had died 12 years ago. Cancer. Slow and cruel. Arthur had held her hand at the end, watching her slip away like water through his fingers. She had smiled at him, even then. "Don't stop making things, Arthur," she had whispered. "The world needs people." He picked up the photograph now. The glass was cracked. Cracked during the move, when Leo's movers had thrown it into a box without care. He turned it over. Something was stuck to the back. A small envelope, sealed with wax, Martha's wax. She had always sealed her letters that way, with a stamp she had carved herself. A tiny oak leaf. Arthur's fingers trembled as he broke the seal. Inside was a letter. 3 pages handwritten in Martha's careful script. He recognized the date at the top, 3 weeks before she died. "Me, dearest Arthur, if you are reading this, then the worst has happened. Leo has done what I always feared he would do. He has taken everything from you, but he has not taken everything, because I have been keeping a secret. You always thought your carvings were worthless. You gave them away to friends, to neighbors, to anyone who admired them. You never asked for money. You never understood their value. But I understood. Every carving you sold, every bird, every bowl, every chair, I took the money and put it aside. Not in a bank, in something better. I bought land, Arthur. Not much at first. A small plot on the edge of the city, then another, then another. I bought them in your name through a trust, so no one would know. Over 20 years I bought 57 acres. The land where the old lumber mill used to stand. The land you always said was worthless. It is not worthless anymore. The city has changed, Arthur. Developers are coming. They want to build a creative district, offices, restaurants, shops, and they want to build it on our land. The trust is in your name. You are the sole beneficiary. The documents are in the safe deposit box at the bank, the one Leo doesn't know about. You are not a failure, Arthur. You are the most successful man I have ever known. You just never let yourself see it. With all my love, Martha Peace, the woodworking tools are not junk. They are the instruments of a master. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Arthur read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in his shirt pocket over his heart. He sat in silence for a long time. Then he began to laugh. Arthur did not tell Leo about the letter. He did not call a lawyer. He did not march into the bank and demand to see the trust documents. He did not do anything that would alert his son to the truth. Instead, he waited. He walked to the old house, the cabin he had built, and found the toolbox still sitting by the curb. The movers had left it there, too heavy to bother with. The tools were scattered across the ground, half buried in leaves and mud. Arthur knelt down, his knees screaming in protest, and picked up each tool one by one. The chisel, the plane, the carving knife that Brenda had stepped on. The blade was bent, but Arthur knew he could fix it. He had fixed everything. Once, he put the tools back in the box. He carried the box back to the Oasis. It took him 40 minutes. His arms ached, his back burned, but he did not stop. Back in his room, he set the toolbox on the floor and opened it. He ran his fingers over the wood. The oak he had chosen himself, the dovetail joints he had cut by hand, the brass hinges he had polished until they shone like mirrors. This box was not garbage. This box was his life. For the next 3 months Arthur worked. He worked in his small room, by the light of a single lamp, while the other residents watched television and played bingo and waited for death. He sanded, he carved, he polished. He took the old neglected tools and restored them to working condition. And he built a chair. Not just any chair. A throne, a masterpiece made from scraps of wood he found in the dumpster behind the facility. Broken pallets, discarded furniture, pieces of lumber that others had thrown away. He worked slowly, carefully, with the patience of a man who had nothing left to lose. The other residents watched him. They asked questions. He did not answer. He just kept working. The chair took shape. Curved arms, a high back, intricate carvings of oak, leaves and acorns. Martha's symbol, the symbol of patience, of slow growth of deep roots. By the end of the 3rd month, the chair was finished. Arthur sat in it for the first time. It held him like a hand. He was ready. Leo came to the Oasis on a Tuesday afternoon. He was wearing a suit, expensive, tailored. The kind of suit that said, "I have arrived." But his eyes were tired. His face was drawn. The business was struggling. Arthur knew this because he had been reading the newspapers. He had been following the story of Leo's company, watching it stumble and fall. "Dad," Leo said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "You look good." "I feel good," Arthur said. He was sitting in his chair, the chair he had built, by the window. The afternoon sun fell across his face. "Listen, Dad, I've been thinking about the old property, the cabin, the land around it." Leo sat on the edge of the bed, leaning forward, trying to look earnest. "There is a developer. They want to buy it. They're offering good money. Life-changing money." Arthur nodded slowly. "I see. The only problem is, the land is in your name, so I need you to sign some papers, just a formality. Then we can split the money. 50-50. Arthur looked at his son. He saw the lies in his eyes, the greed, the desperation. "At the Oak Room, in the creative district. We'll sign the papers there." Leo blinked. The Oak Room? That is expensive, Dad. I know, Arthur said. I am paying. He did not understand why his father, who had nothing, was offering to pay for dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city. He did not understand because he did not know about Martha's secret. He did not know about the 57 acres. He did not know that the creative district, the one with the oak room, the one where his company rented office space, was built on Arthur's land. He did not know that he was about to have dinner with his landlord. The oak room was the crown jewel of the creative district, chandeliers made of antlers, tables carved from ancient oak, a fireplace large enough to roast a whole pig. The menu had no prices, because if you had to ask, you could not afford it. Leo and Brenda arrived first. Brenda was wearing a red dress that cost more than most people's rent. Leo was wearing a watch that cost more than Brenda's dress. They sat at a table near the window, drinking champagne, confident and smug. "This is it," Brenda whispered. "After tonight, the land is ours. We can sell it to the developer and pay off all our debts." Leo smiled. "My father is such a fool. Your father is a pathetic old man who doesn't know what he has." They laughed. The restaurant doors opened. Arthur walked in. He was wearing the same clothes he had worn for 20 years. Faded jeans, a flannel shirt, a worn leather jacket. His hands were stained with varnish. His hair was uncombed. His shoes had holes in the soles. He looked exactly like what he was, an old woodworker who had never cared about fashion. The maitre d' saw him. The maitre d' went pale. "Mr. Vance," the maitre d' said, bowing slightly. "We weren't expecting you. Your table is ready." Arthur nodded. "Thank you, Charles." He walked through the restaurant, past the other diners, past the waiters carrying trays of expensive food, past Leo and Brenda's table. Leo stood up. "Dad, where are you going? Our table is here." Arthur stopped. He turned. "No, Leo," he said. "Our table is over there." He pointed to the center of the restaurant, to a table that was larger than the others, draped in white linen, set with crystal and silver. A table that was reserved for one person, the owner. Leo's face went pale. "What is this? What is happening?" The maitre d' cleared his throat. "Mr. Vance owns this building, sir. He owns this entire district. He has owned it for 20 years. Leo laughed, a sharp, desperate sound. "That is impossible. He is a woodworker, a nobody. He lives in a nursing home." Brenda grabbed Leo's arm. "What is going on?" Arthur walked to the center table and sat down. He gestured for Leo and Brenda to join him. They did because they did not know what else to do. A waiter appeared. Arthur ordered a bottle of wine, the most expensive bottle on the list. He did not look at the price. "Dad," Leo said, "explain." Arthur reached down and picked up the toolbox. He had carried it with him, the old wooden box with the brass hinges. He set it on the table and opened it. Inside were his tools, the chisels, the planes, the carving knives, the marking gauge, and a stack of documents. "You wanted me to sign something, Leo," Arthur said. "I brought my own papers." He pulled out the first document, a trust agreement, Martha's trust. "This is the deed to 57 acres of land," Arthur said. "The land this restaurant is standing on, the land where your office is located, the land you have been renting from me for 7 years." Leo's mouth fell open. "You've been paying me rent, Leo, every month, through a holding company you didn't know I owned. You thought you were renting from a corporation. You were renting from your father." Arthur pulled out the second document, a lease agreement. "Your company is 3 months behind on rent. Your lease is up for renewal next month. I am not renewing it." Leo stood up. His chair scraped against the floor. "You can't do that. You can't just—" "I can," Arthur said. "And I am." He pulled out the third document, a report from the labor board, a list of Leo's employees, the ones he had not paid, The ones he had fired without severance, the ones he had cheated. Your company is bankrupt, Leo. You have been stealing from your employees to fund your lifestyle. The developer you wanted to sell my land to, they pulled out last week. They found out about your debts. Brenda was crying now. Loud, ugly sobs. Her mascara ran down her face in black rivers. Arthur looked at his son. Really looked at him. He saw the fear behind the anger, the shame behind the pride. The little boy who had never learned that the world did not owe him anything. I gave you everything, Leo. I built that cabin with my own hands so you would have a roof over your head. I taught you to carve so you would have a skill. I loved you more than I loved myself. He closed the toolbox. And you threw it away. You threw me away. You threw my tools in the garbage and called me a failure. He stood up. Tonight, I am not signing anything. I am not giving you anything. I am taking back what is mine. He walked out of the restaurant. The toolbox swung at his side. The diners watched him go. The old man in the faded clothes, the man who owned everything and wanted nothing, behind him. Leo sat alone at the table, his head in his hands, his empire crumbling around him. Brenda had already left. The bankruptcy was swift. Without the creative district office, Leo's company lost its prestige. Without the prestige, it lost its clients. Without the clients, it lost everything. Within 6 months, Leo was living in a studio apartment on the wrong side of town. He drove a 10-year-old car. He ate ramen noodles for dinner. Brenda left him. She took what was left of their money and moved to Florida. Leo did not try to stop her. He thought about calling his father. He thought about apologizing. He thought about driving to the Oasis and falling on his knees and begging for forgiveness. But he did not. Because he knew deep down that forgiveness was not something he deserved. And he knew, even deeper, that his father had already forgiven him. That was the worst part. Arthur did not return to the Oasis. He moved back to the old cabin. The one he had built with his own hands. The one Leo had tried to take from him. He repaired the damage the movers had done. He fixed the broken window. He replaced the rotted boards on the porch. He opened his toolbox and set it on the workbench. And then he began to build. Not chairs, not tables, not thrones, something bigger. The Arthur and Martha Vance Foundation for Young Woodworkers. He took the money from the creative district, the rent, the leases, the sale of a few parcels, and put it all into the foundation. He built a workshop behind the cabin. He bought tools. He hired teachers. And he opened his doors to anyone who wanted to learn. Young men and women who had been told they were failures, who had been pushed toward college degrees they didn't want, careers they didn't love, lives that were not their own. He taught them to carve. He taught them to measure. He taught them to see the beauty in a piece of wood and bring it out with their hands. You are not failures, he told them. You are creators. The world needs people who make things. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. The years passed. Arthur grew older. His hands grew stiffer. His eyes grew dimmer. But the workshop stayed open. The students kept coming. The tools kept moving. On his 85th birthday, the foundation held a celebration. Hundreds of former students came back to the cabin. They brought their work, chairs and tables and cradles and carvings. They filled the yard with the things they had made. Arthur sat in his old chair, the throne he had built in the Oasis, the one that had carried him through the darkest days of his life, and watched them. He thought about Martha, about her letter, about the secret she had kept for 20 years. You are not a failure, she had written. You are the most successful man I have ever known. He smiled. Arthur heard about him sometimes. Through friends, through the news. Leo had started over. A small business, a modest life. He had remarried, a quiet woman who worked at a library. They had a daughter. They named her Martha. Arthur did not reach out. He did not write. He did not call. But every year, on the anniversary of the dinner at the Oak Room, he would take a small carving out of his toolbox. A wooden bird, delicate and beautiful, the first thing he had ever made as a boy, and leave it on the porch of the cabin. He did not know if Leo ever came to take it. He liked to think that he did. The last time anyone saw Arthur Vance, he was standing in the workshop behind the cabin, his hands on a piece of oak, his tools spread out around him. A student asked him what he was building. Arthur looked up. His eyes were clear. His hands were steady. But I want her to know that someone was thinking about her. He went back to work. The sun set over the cabin. The tools kept moving, and the old woodworker, the man who had lost everything and found everything, kept building. Because that was what he did. That was what he had always done.